You love your cat. I mean, of course you do. But what if I told you the way you're showing that love is being completely misinterpreted? What if some of your best intentions, your most loving habits, are actually causing your cat a ton of anxiety, stress, or even physical harm? Yeah, so let's dive into this, because today we're going to translate the silent language of cats.
And this is the central idea here. And look, I get it. It's an uncomfortable one. It points out that most of us cat owners don't even have a clue we're making these fundamental mistakes. Why? Because we see our cats through human eyes, but they're living in a completely different world, a world driven by instinct and survival.
So, how fluent are you in feline? Can you spot the difference between just a quirky little habit and a genuine cry for help? Well, this explainer is going to give you the 5 key signs to look out for, so you can make absolutely sure your love is being felt, not just forced on them.
All right, first up is something I think almost all of us are guilty of. You see your cat, you're just overwhelmed with love, and you just want to scoop him up for a big, tight hug, right? It feels like pure love to you. But to them, it is a completely different story.
Okay, so here's where the huge disconnect happens. For a cat, an animal that is both a predator and a prey animal, being held tightly where they can't move doesn't feel like safety. It feels like being caught. You're actually triggering their deep primal fight-or-flight response. So in that moment, they feel trapped, and that feeling creates stress, which when it happens over and over is incredibly damaging to their health.
So the takeaway here is this. Real affection, in their language, is all about choice and respect. Let them be the one to initiate contact. Offer your hand, and if they lean in and rub against it, that's your invitation. When you respect their boundaries, you're not being cold or distant. You're actually building a much deeper, more genuine bond that's based on trust.
And speaking of respecting their space, that leads us right into our second mistake, completely ignoring it when they try to create that space for themselves. We've all seen this. You have people over and poof, the cat vanishes under the bed. We might even laugh about it, call them shy. But you know what? Constant hiding or a sudden increase in hiding is no laughing matter.
This is another one of those major misinterpretations. Hiding isn't just some quirky personality trait. It's one of the most powerful signals a cat can send you. It's their #1 survival instinct when they feel threatened, totally overwhelmed, or even sick. It's their way of screaming that something is profoundly wrong in their world.
So if your cat suddenly becomes a ghost in your own home, it's time for you to become a detective. Seriously, is there a new source of fear, like a new vacuum cleaner or loud construction next door? Is there some kind of chronic stress from another pet in the house? Or, and this one is critical, could they be hiding an illness? Cats are absolute masters at hiding pain, so a behavioral change like this, it needs your immediate attention.
All right, let's talk about food. Because our deep desire to spoil our little furry friends with tasty treats and, little bites from our own dinner plates, well, it can have some pretty serious long-term consequences.
It seems so harmless, doesn't it? A little piece of cheese here, a few extra treats there. But the evidence is clear. Feeding your cat low-quality food that's full of fillers, giving them way too many treats, or worst of all, any human food, is basically like a slow poison. Cats are what's called obligate carnivores. That means their bodies are specifically designed for meat, not the carbs, sugars, and salts that are all over our diets and in cheap pet foods.
And at the end of the day, this is the bottom line. The quality of the fuel you put into their body directly determines the quality and the length of their life. You're not just feeding them for today. You're investing in their health for all their years to come. A proper diet is truly one of the greatest acts of love you can give them. Okay, now let's get into 2 final mistakes that are so common, so ingrained in our daily routines, that we often don't even see them as problems. But for your cat, these silent stressors can create a constant, low-level anxiety.
Okay, let's start with the litter box. It's really easy to just think of it as a chore, right? But for your cat, that's their personal space. They are incredibly clean animals by nature. Forcing them to use a dirty litter box is like forcing one of us to use a filthy, overflowing public toilet. It's stressful, it's unsanitary, and it can cause them to avoid the box entirely, which leads to a whole host of other problems. Now, just as important is the second silent stressor, a lack of play. We see our cats lounging around all day and we just assume they're lazy, but inside that little snoozing furball is a highly evolved predator. They need an outlet for those hunting instincts. Without interactive play, all that pent-up energy turns into boredom, stress, and it can even come out as aggression. Seriously, just 10 to 15 minutes of dedicated playtime a day can make a world of difference for their mental health.
So, we've talked about forced hugs, ignoring hiding, bad diets, dirty environments, and boredom.
When you really put it all together, it starts to paint a very clear picture. This isn't about loving your cat any less. It's about finally learning to speak their language.
This might be the most important takeaway of all. For your cat, you aren't just a part of their world, you are their world. Your actions, your awareness, your choices, they define their reality, their comfort, and their happiness every single day.
So the challenge really is this. Stop thinking like a human and start trying to see the world through their eyes. Respect their space, listen to their silent signals, and provide for their deep instinctual needs. Because that is how you translate your affection into a language they can finally truly understand.